Okie dokie. Hello, hello, hello. It's 9:45 a.m. on the AM dial. And you know what that means. I'm Jen Koken, and I'm your host of Java with Jen. Java with Jen. Java with Jen. Java with Jen. But like most mornings, I got my day started really early. So we're switching to water. Too much caffeine. Mm-mm. But you should grab your coffee and tune in with me. If you don't know me, if you haven't met me, my name's Jen Koken, and I am your favorite executive leadership coach and one of the trusted voices for women in STEM to go from imposter syndrome to amplifying their authority. And this month, we are featuring one of my favorite people, Missy Day, who is the founder of What's Your Story and is an expert in storytelling. And this whole month is going to be about how do we weave storytelling into our day to day presence and why is storytelling important? I think, particularly for women in STEM and for leaders, the idea of how do I craft a narrative that people can identify with so I can build trust with my team without saying everything, without telling private stuff can be daunting. We're told to be authentic, but which parts of your story do you weave in to be authentic? And that's what Missy is here to break things down with us, for us. She's going to break it down, is what she's going to do. And meanwhile, don't forget, shameless plug for my book, Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower, available next month, as a matter of fact. So let me bring Missy in here, say hello so you can see and meet her because she's amazing. Hi, Missy. Thanks for coming on Java with Jen.
Hi, Jen. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So excited for you to be here. Now, a couple things about Missy. She is part of my Empowering Expert series, and she's going to be leading a webinar she's going to be my guest expert on February 26th, and we'll keep shamelessly promoting that throughout the month. And she's also a guest expert in my Executive Presence Accelerator. And I wanted to have her on so that we could break down what is storytelling, period, right? What do you do with it in a corporate setting? Um, how to have fun, because that's something that Missy is an expert at, is having fun. And how are you sharing your knowledge with others? How are we sharing our experience? And how do we integrate storytelling into those experiences and to sharing our knowledge? Because I think when we tell stories, it's probably more impactful, would be my guess. So welcome,
Yeah.
Missy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. And I think to kind of kick off the month, storytelling is such a word that's used a lot. I think it would be important for us to start with what is storytelling, and why is it so important to you that had you found this organization? What's your story?
Well, it started when I was a little girl, really is where it started. My dad and my grandfather were amazing storytellers, and they could, take something, just pick up something and start telling you a story about it. And that was fascinating to me as a little girl. And so much so that when they would want to read books to me, I'd say, no, I don't want you to read a book. I want you to tell me the story. And so from there, I just grew from there. And, when I was in corporate, even when I was a manager, I would use story form to do training because they they connected with it better than me just, reading from a PowerPoint or a, book or something like that. And when I was asked to share my story about 8 years ago, I had never had any intention of sharing my story. And then I did. And that's when it dawned on me that, you know what, we go through things the way we do for storytelling purposes to help
Mhm.
others. And so that's how What Your Story was born.
I love that. And you spent what, 25 years in corporate
I
before
did.
going
Hmm.
full into what's your story?
Hmm.
Did you find that I don't know how to ask this, but like, were you consciously using stories at work? Were you telling stories and you just didn't know it? Like, how did things shift for you when you founded What's Your Story?
Yeah, I didn't know it. And, prior to corporate, I was a social worker for seniors for 10 years prior to that. And I loved hearing all their stories. When I would get to go out and visit, the people that were in my caseload. And I would just ask them, and they, would tell me stories and things, and I just loved it. So when I made the transition into corporate, I wasn't realizing that I was using storytelling until after, and I started my own business. And then it was like, oh, yeah, so I was using storytelling, in management and didn't even notice.
And did anybody you didn't notice, I think sometimes people I don't know, I feel like do you feel like in a corporate setting, people would shy away from storytelling in
Oh,
a
yes,
sense?
because they want that barrier between I'm your manager and your, staff. And so let's not, you know, get beyond that kind of a thing. Where I was more, if people asked me questions, I would share things about my life and me, and I would always ask them, when we would do their reviews. So tell me, what do you want to do? What do you want to be in 5 years? What's your dreams, aspirations? And my peers would be like, what are you doing? I'm
Well, you're
building a
asking them to tell you
relationship, maybe.
right? And you're also asking them to tell you their story, their future story. What do you
Hmm.
want your future story to
Right.
be? But I think that's something that's so important. The number one thing that any manager can build with someone who's reporting to them is trust.
Hmm. Yes.
And people, and asking someone what their story is instead of being I could also hear people go, "Well, what's the story? Why didn't you get this done?" We're not talking about that. You're
Hmm.
wanting to demonstrate what it is to tell your story and allow other people the opportunity to tell their future story, let's say.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and it helps me because, if people are really honest and you're at a corporate job and maybe that's not your lifelong dream, well, then let's talk about that. What is, and what can I do to help facilitate that at some point, for them?
It's so interesting because it reminds me of something I often had to say to my clients. Your job as a manager is to manage people. I have to remind them because it can be daunting. Oh God, they're coming to me, it takes so much time for me to answer their questions. Well, let's look and see if you train people to come to you with all these questions, then you've trained them to look to you for the answers,
Hmm.
probably because you're so busy that you've shortcut things. So
Right.
by
Hmm.
being able to have your eyes on, well, how am I developing and training you over the next year, over the next couple of years? You're building that trust, and then they're going to have a great story to tell about you as a boss. Also, not like that's your end game, but I would think that kind of builds into it too.
Right. Yes. And I just, if I can quickly share a story around that
Of course.
topic, is I was went to have my car washed a couple of weeks ago. And so I was sitting there waiting. And so this guy comes up to me and he said, your car's ready, Missy. And it kind of took me by surprise, actually. And I looked up and I'm looking at him and he goes, do you remember me? And I said, Albert? And he said, you were my manager at City. And he said, I've never forgotten you. And he goes, I want to take the time to tell you what a difference you made in my life when I worked there. I just started bawling because I was like, first of all, I haven't been there, in 14 years. And I was just like, that's incredible to me.
We don't know the impact that we've had on people, and it
Hmm.
was such a wonderful opportunity for you to hear that impact, and I think yeah, go ahead, sorry.
He said, I want to tell you that I'm a manager here. And he said, I use the skills, I copy you. He goes, I copied you how you were to all of us. And that's how I've built my team here. And we don't hear those things. You're right. We just don't. We just, go through, and this was part of my story at City. But to have somebody there in front of me sharing that story was very um humbling, and I was so grateful.
Wow. That's incredible because often we don't get the opportunity to do that, and I think it can feel really lonely as a manager and as a leader, and you kinda wonder, "Is what I'm doing making a difference?" So what a
Mhm,
great opportunity for him to say thank you and for you to see the legacy that you
mhm.
left. That's
Yes, that was
amazing.
very cool.
That's amazing. Is there anything else around storytelling that we haven't talked about just in general?
I think oftentimes we kind of look at our own lives and we think that it's not going to be interesting. Nobody wants to hear our stories, or we don't think they're important. But the storytelling piece is so powerful in that, we never know, like we were just talking about, when you're brave and you want to be a storyteller and share your story, you have no idea the impact you're going to make on somebody. It could be the message they've been waiting to hear, or something that they're going through right at that moment, and they need to hear that, hey, she went through this and I can do it too.
Yeah, that's interesting because, oh my gosh, I was trying to be present with you when you were talking about that because it made me think of something else too, which is, um, w have you ever come across people that feel like telling stories is bragging, and so we're taught to be humble, so we shouldn't say those things about
Oh
ourselves.
yes, don't toot your own horn.
Right, right. So how does a person get over feeling like, "Well, if I tell that, it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn?"
I tell speakers this all the time. I tell them the main thing I want you to remember as a speaker is this isn't about you. It has nothing to do with you. You're delivering a message for somebody in the audience. And that's all you need to remember and to focus on, is that it's about the person in the audience that's going to walk away from here transformed because you shared your story.
Same with a manager to somebody they're managing, it's gonna
Yeah.
make a difference for this person, and
Hmm.
I was also thinking that sometimes we just wanna talk about our foibles, but saying, "Look, I was where you were, and here's how it worked out for me. It worked out
Hmm.
really well, and here's where I'm at," can let people know, "Yeah, there's a mountain to climb, but you'll get through it,"
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Hmm.
So great. Thank you so much for being here, Missy. Now, everybody, Missy's going to be Missy Day, founder of What's Your Story. She spent decades in management, in corporate, and now works with speakers and coaches and make sure that they have a story to tell in a way that's going to be impactful to the people around them. She's going to be with us on Java with Jen all month long. Tune in next week, 9:45 a.m., where we're going to talk about the power of storytelling in corporate, like in your business. How do you integrate it when you're at work? And this has been another episode of Java with Jen, Java with Jen, and Missy. Java with Jen, Java with
Yeah,
Jen.
rich and
So make sure to tune in again with us next week. And until then, we will see you. Ciao, ciao for now.